Saying the name ISIS in this day and age is bound to invoke feelings of rage and disgust in the hearts of just about anybody who isn't a follower. I think saying they're bad isn't really groundbreaking, like we all know that at this point, but I do think that when we speak about them as a whole, we do often forget about the individuals that make up this collective. And what I hope to do in this episode is kind of peel back the mask and just basically highlight some of the key figures that have spearheaded some of the worst genocide campaigns and war crimes that this world has ever seen. So, I can imagine that you've already read the title, so let's just jump into it, shall we? Today, we're going to be talking about ISIS. So for the sake of the video, let's define who we actually mean by ISIS, while trying to keep it simple. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, are also known as ISIL, or ISIL, what stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, but are officially known as just simply IS for Islamic State, and that's what we're going to be using from now on. I'm not going to pretend that I'm some expert on Islamic theology or historical global politics, so take this with a grain of salt, but simply put, IS is a militant group and former unrecognised proto-state that follows a Salafadi jihadist doctrine, what originated from the writings of a prison inmate in the 60s. Their mission, in a nutshell, is to get back to what they see as true Islam, basically a transnational hybrid religious political ideology that most Islamic people would say is the opposite to the religion that they know and love. Islam is the Arabic word for peace, so the things IS have done to others are definitely not very Islamic at all. IS has been closely linked to Al-Qaeda and is said to have been part of the group for a while. I'm not unsure as to how true that actually is. What I am sure of, however, is that IS has had a long and very complicated history, but not much is actually said about them globally until 2014, and this is where they gained prominence. The IS had actually managed to drive Iraqi forces out of key cities in its western Iraq offensive, like the capture of Mosul, where IS insurgents defeated the Iraqi army and was able to take control of Mosul International Airport in June of 2014, as well as the Sinjar massacre in August of the same year. The Sinjar massacre marked the beginning of the genocide of the Yazidis by IS, the killing and abduction of thousands of Yazidi men, women and children. It took place in August 2014 in Sinjar city and Sinjar district in Iraq, and affected millions. The genocide led to the expulsion and effective exile of the Yazidis from their ancestral lands in Upper Mesopotamia. IS's merciless persecution of the Yazidis gained international attention and was one of the things that resulted in the American-led intervention in Iraq. You may also remember when the US, UK and Australia made emergency airdrops to the Yazidis who had to flee to a mountain range to basically get it. The YPG and PKK fighters opened a humanitarian corridor to the Sinjar mountains and also helped the Yazidis in a moment of almost world unification against a common evil. Hundreds of thousands of women, men and children were displaced as a result of this and had their homes destroyed. A fate I can barely comprehend. I can't even imagine the feeling of pain and dread those people must have been made to endure. IS is also known for its videos of beheadings and other types of executions of both soldiers and civilians, including journalists and aid workers, and its destruction of cultural heritage sites are well known. The United Nations holds IS responsible for committing human rights abuses, genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity. It's easy to see why the WHO gets lost in all of this, but somebody was given the orders. This wasn't just random, it was all very carefully crafted by people at the top. And one of those people at the top was Abu Musab al-Zarqawi.
February 22, 2006, Zarqawi's branch of al-Qaeda attacked one of the holiest sites in Shia Islam, the Golden Mosque in Samarra. The Shia, who are the majority sect in Iraq, decided to fight back.
Violence is spreading in Iraq, a day after one of Shiite Islam's holiest shrines was attacked.
Zarqawi had long sought to spark a civil war. Now he had. His confidence high, he released a video that revealed his face for the first time.
We captured it. It was clearly a propaganda film. He was the visionary leader and he was the communicator for it. He was many things wrapped up into one, and he was a psychopathic killer. We didn't know where he was. But by that time, even amongst ourselves, we said, we're gonna get him.
As a teenager, al-Zarqawi had been a bully and a thug, a bootlegger and a heavy drinker, and even allegedly a pimp in Zarqa's underworld. He was disruptive, constantly involved in brawls. When he was 15, according to his police record obtained by a journalist, he participated in a robbery of a relative's home, during which the relative was killed. 2 years later, a year shy of graduation, he had dropped out of school. Then, in 1989, at the age of 23, he travelled to Afghanistan. And this was the first time he'd ever actually been out of Jordan, and pretty much where our story starts with him, because this changed everything. Zarqawi was young and impressionable, and now for the first time he was interacting with doctrinaire Islamists from across the Muslim world, some with very close ties to high political figures like Osama bin Laden, and was his first exposure to al-Qaeda, sending him down a path of radicalization that would forever seal his fate. He would come and go a few times, even going as far as to have his own training camp in later years. But he was a ruthless self-promoter who US officials claimed killed or wounded thousands of people in the past 3 years in a variety of ways, including, but not limited to, suicide bombings, mass executions and beheadings that have been videotaped. He developed a mythic aura of invulnerability, but he was not the terrorist mastermind that he often claimed to be. But after a while, he did have ambitions and dreams to carry the ideology of jihad. His grand ambition was to set up an Islamist state. When al-Zarqawi left Afghanistan in 1993 and returned to Jordan, they found a lot had changed. In their absence, the Jordanians and the Israelis had begun negotiations that would lead to the signing of a peace treaty in 1994. The Palestinians had signed the Oslo Accords in 1993, and the Iraqis had lost the Gulf War. Unemployment was up sharply, the result of privatisation drive agreed with the International Monetary Fund, and the Jordanians were frustrated and angry. The Muslim Brotherhood were the kingdom's only viable opposition political force, which had agreed to support King Hussein in exchange for being allowed to participate in public and parliamentary life, appeared unable to cope with the rising disaffection. Small underground Islamist groups had therefore begun to appear, composed largely of men who had fought in the Afghan jihad and who had been guided by increasingly loud voices of militant clerics who felt the Muslim Brotherhood had been co-opted by the state. After some time, Zarqawi started to build an Islamic group. The idea was there, but it didn't have no leadership and no name, until they named it Jama'at al-Tawhid wal Jahid. Eventually, he and a dozen or so enthusiastic men, with the primary objective to overthrow the monarchy and establish the Islamic government, was started. Their first operation in Zarqa in 1993, when al-Zarqawi dispatched one of their men to a local cinema in order to blow it up because it was showing pornographic films. But the hapless would-be bomber apparently got so distracted by what was happening on the screen that he forgot about his bomb. It exploded and blew off his legs. Hee-haw! In another botched operation, according to court testimony that he denied, gave al-Zarqawi 7 grenades he had smuggled into Jordan, and al-Zarqawi hid them in the cellar of his family's home. His friend was already under surveillance by Jordan's intelligence service at the time because of his growing popularity. The grenades were quickly discovered, and the two men, along with a number of their followers, found themselves for the first time before a state security court. Al-Zarqawi told the court that he had found the grenades while walking down the street. The judges were not amused. They convicted him and his friend of possessing illegal weapons and belonging to a banned organisation. In 1994, Al-Zarqawi was sentenced to 15 years in prison, but he would flourish there. Swaka prison sits on the southern desert's edge, 60 miles south of Amman, and its political prisoners, both Islamist and secular, are housed in 4 wings. Al-Zarqawi embraced prison life in the extreme, as he appears to have figured everything out from there. According to fellow inmates who spoke to a reporter recently, his primary obsessions were recruiting other prisoners to his cause, building his body, and memorising the 6,236 verses of the Quran. He was stern, tough, and unrelenting on anything that he considered to be an infraction of his rules. Yet, he was often seen in the prison courtyard crying as he read the Quran. Still, however, Islamists flocked to him. He attracted recruits. Some joined him out of fascination, others out of curiosity, and still others out of fear. In a short time, he had organised prison life at Swaka like a gang leader. Zarqawi basically controlled the prison ward. He decided who would cook, who would do the laundry, who would lead the readings of the Quran. He was extremely protective of his followers and extremely tough with the prisoners outside his group. He didn't trust them. He considered them infidels. Already called the Emir or Prince, he had an uncanny ability to control, almost to hypnotise. He could order his followers to do things just by moving his eyes. Jama'at al-Tawhid wal-Jihad continued to grow both inside prison. Many of the prisoners and even Swaka's guards defected to Al-Zarqawi, and the numbers only increased as the days went by. He may or may not have known that Jordan was about to declare him a suspect in a series of foiled terrorist attacks intended for New Year's Eve of 1999. The plan, which became known as the Millennium Plot, involving the bombing of Christian landmarks and other tourist sites along with the Radisson Hotel in Amman. Had it succeeded, it would have been Al-Zarqawi's first involvement in a major terrorist attack. But you could say a failed attempt was all that was needed. The wheels were in motion by this point. Then, in 2000, Al-Zarqawi set out for the Western Desert, circling Herat. His goal was to build an army that he could export anywhere in the world. The number of Al-Zarqawi's fighters multiplied from dozens to hundreds during the following year, and by the time the forces evacuated their camp prior to the US airstrikes of October 2001, the fighters and their families numbered in some 2,000 to 3,000 people. It was in Herat that Al-Zarqawi formed the militant organisation Jund al-Sham, or Soldiers of the Levant. Herat was the beginning of what he is now. He had command responsibilities for the first time, and he had a battle plan. When the United States launched its war inside Afghanistan on October 7th, 2001, Al-Zarqawi joined forces with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban for the first time. He and his Jund al-Sham fought in and around Herat and Kandahar. Al-Zarqawi was wounded in an American airstrike in the chest when the ceiling of the building in which he was operating collapsed on him. Miraculously, however, he survived. Then, in December 2001, accompanied by some 300 fighters from Jund al-Sham, Al-Zarqawi left Afghanistan once again. He entered Iran and the autonomous area in Kurdistan. He expanded his network, recruited and trained new fighters, and set up bases, safe houses, military training camps, just proving how much of a problem he was determined to be. Then, on February 5th, 2003, Secretary of State Colin Powell catapulted him onto the world stage. In his address to the United Nations making the case for war in Iraq, Powell identified Al-Zarqawi, mistakenly as it turns out, as the crucial link between Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein's regime. In the summer of 2003, Al-Zarqawi moved to the sunny areas of Iraq. He became infamous almost at once. On August the 7th, he allegedly carried out a car bomb attack on the Jordanian embassy in Baghdad. Just 12 days later, he was linked to the bombing of the United Nations headquarters, in which 22 people died. Then, on August 29th, in what was then the deadliest attack of the war, he engineered the killing of over 100 people, including a revered cleric, the Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir al-Hakim, in a car bombing outside the Shia Islam's holy shrine in Najaf. Some truly horrific criminal activity. Continuing on, in May 2004, he inaugurated his notorious wave of hostage beheadings. He also specialised in suicide and truck bombings of Shiite shrines and mosques, largely in Shiite neighbourhoods. His primary aim was to provoke a civil war. He became best known for his videotaped beheadings. One after the other they appeared on jihadist websites, always the same. In the background was the trademark black banner of al-Zarqawi's newest group, and in the foreground, a blindfolded hostage, kneeling and pleading for his life, was dressed in an orange jumpsuit resembling those worn by the detainees at Guantanamo Bay. In September 2005, he declared all-out war on Shiites in Iraq after the Iraqi government offensive on insurgents in the sunny town of Tal Afar. He dispatched numerous suicide bombers throughout Iraq to attack American soldiers and areas with large concentrations of Shia militants. He is also thought to be responsible for the 2005 bombing of 3 hotels in Amman, Jordan. As you now might be starting to realise, he had seriously done a lot and enough was enough. His threat was forever growing larger and his following and influence was just following suit. Something needed to be done to prevent the loss of any more innocent lives. So, the Joint Task Force, Task Force 145, had been tracking him for some time, and although there had been some close calls, he'd eluded them on many occasions. United States intelligence officials then received tips from Iraqi senior leaders from Zarqawi's network that he and some of his associates were in the Bukaba area. According to the book Task Force Black by Mark Urban, the intelligence was received from a senior AQI leader who the author Mark Bowden dubbed Abu Haider, who had been captured in Operation Larchwood 4. The safe house itself was watched for over 6 weeks before Zarqawi was observed entering the building by operations from Task Force 145. Jordanian intelligence reportedly helped to identify his location. The area was subsequently secured by Iraqi forces, who was the first ground forces to arrive. And then, Zarqawi was killed in a targeted killing on June the 7th, 2006, while attending a meeting in an isolated safe house north of Bukaba. At 2:15 GMT, 2 United States Air Force F-16C jets identified the house, and the lead jet dropped 2 500-pound or 230-kilogram guided bombs, a laser-guided GBU-12 and GPS-guided GBU-38s on the building. When the commando force arrived about a half hour later, they found medical personnel with a still alive Zarqawi on a stretcher. An American medic, understanding Zarqawi's value to interrogators, did try to save his life, but the terrorist leader soon died on the scene. Task force units across Iraq immediately struck multiple targets, including 14 in Baghdad, in an effort to hit each one before word of Zarqawi's death spread to the AQI operatives and caused them to flee. These strikes yielded intelligence, revealing further connections amongst terrorist groups and leading to new raids. But that was it. It was all over and done with. Well done, everyone. Hoorah! But, I mean, sadly, this isn't how the story ends. It's true that Zarqawi was finished, but the threat very much still remained. At the White House, President Bush hailed the killing as...
The difficult and necessary mission in Iraq continues. We can expect the terrorists and insurgents to carry on without him. We can expect the sectarian violence to continue. Yet the ideology of terror has lost one of its most visible and aggressive leaders.
Defense Secretary Donald H. Rumsfeld also said that while the death of al-Zarqawi is a significant victory on the war on terror, it won't end terrorism. However, any hopes that the Jordanian-born terror leader's death would help stem the violence in Iraq immediately were dimmed just hours later, when 2 bombs struck a market and a police patrol in Baghdad, killing at least 19 people and wounding more than 40. Later, a parked car bomb exploded in North Baghdad, killing 6 people and wounding a further 15. But this is where the subject of our story today ends. As I write this, the Taliban has just taken Afghanistan back after 20 years of war in just 1 week. After the withdrawal of the last troops, the Taliban or IS or Al-Qaeda, they're almost all one at this point, have reached a huge milestone, now even being recognised as an actual government by some places. A terrifying thought as we fall off the precipice into a dark, deep abyss of war and terror once again. My heart goes out to the innocent people who have lost their lives in the name of war, who've given their souls in the name of freedom, freedom that we all enjoy, or at least try to the families of those people, to the friends of those, to every name written on a statue for remembrance, and every name that didn't even get the chance to make it that far. It's a somber day as I think about the people in war-torn countries like Afghanistan, Syria, or even Palestine. I feel ashamed to call myself a human. It's hard to know what to do or what to say or even who to say it to. Hopefully, one day, we will find our way. But thank you for watching to the end. If you liked this video, then please go to your nearest window and howl at the sky. Tell them that I sent you. Peace.